Good morning, everyone. Calling to order Clark County Board of Health this Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Then we'll go into the roll call. Michelle?
Counselor Young?
Here.
Counselor Belcott?
Present.
Counselor Fuentes?
Here.
Counselor Little?
Present.
And Chair Marshall?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda? No amendments. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any corrections, changes to the minutes of April 23rd? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Then we'll move right on to the director's report. Dr. Melnick?
Good morning, counselors. Is this working? Okay, yeah, I can hear myself now. So I'm delighted to introduce our new deputy director for our Department of Public Health, Jeanette York. She just started this month after it was a good, strong search there. She comes with a lot of background in public health. She's got a master's in public health from Ohio State. And from 2009, well, she works for some small public health departments back east, but in 2000, I believe in Ohio, among other places. Okay. And then from 2009 to 2019, she was the public health director for Lewis County here in Washington State. And then in 2019, she moved to Butte County, California, where she was the public health director until 2024. And then was thinking about retirement and then decided she really loved public health and wanted to come back and also wanted to be back in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Southwest Washington. So we were able to recruit her back here.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. The lure of the Northwest and public health brought you right back.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. I am thrilled to be here. I did that short stint in Northern California, but I was so ready to come home. And even though I'm not from here, I'm originally from Georgia, I call this home and love Washington and love public health and so glad to have this opportunity. So thank you.
Great. Well, we appreciate you. And if there's anything we can do to support you, just let us know.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay. Directors Public Health in Action, I think.
Is that on? Yeah, there we go. We're up to public health in action. So we hadn't had enough algae and our experience with algae. We now have had some experience with benthic mats, benthic algae mats, which we're going to go into here and discuss how we address those. So I'm delighted to introduce Maggie Palomaki, who is an environmental health specialist with our recreational water program. And she's going to introduce you to this form of algae known as benthic algae mats.
Thank you. Good morning, counselors. Thank you for having us. As Dr. Melnick said, I'm Maggie Palomaki. I'm an environmental health specialist here representing the recreational water safety team of Clark County Public Health. So today I want to talk with you about our swim beach monitoring program, specifically as it relates to planktonic algae as well as benthic algae mats. Next slide. Thank you. So let's start with the basics. What is a harmful algae bloom? So harmful algae blooms go by many names that you might hear me use a little bit interchangeably, including blue-green algae, planktonic blooms, cyanobacteria, toxic algae, many names, mostly referring to the same thing. Per the CDC, a harmful algae bloom is an overgrowth of algae in the water that could affect water quality and aquatic life. Some HABs produced by bacteria can create toxins that may also harm people, animals, and the local environment. So these have been very common in Clark County for quite a while. They appear as thick scums or blooms on the surface of a body of water when there's rapid cyanobacteria growth. They thrive in warm, nutrient-rich, and slow-moving water, so most commonly lakes and ponds. Typically, it shows up as a very bright green color, but it can also be shades of brown, red, and even kind of a blue teal that's actually very pretty. It does have a very strong odor of decay, so when you're around a bloom, you can usually tell with multiple senses. Next slide, please. So where does public health come into this? Well, we do weekly site visits in the summer to the lakes that are prone to these harmful algae blooms. So typically that's May through October when it's a little bit warmer. And then we will also investigate any time of year and any body of water if we receive a complaint or notification of an illness. So if we go to that site and a bloom is present, we collect a water sample and we send it to the King County Environmental Lab in Seattle, where they analyze the toxins. And then when we receive those toxin analysis results, if they are above a defined threshold that the state sets, we will issue an advisory to limit recreation on that body of water. A big part of our program is also public education. So we do a lot of education and outreach events throughout the year, particularly in the summer. And that can be things like farmers markets, Camas days, lake cleanup events, all that kind of stuff. Next slide. So this is 2024 by the numbers with our harmful algae blooms. We did over 66 site visits to the different lakes shown here in green. From those visits, we ended up collecting 38 water samples that were sent for toxin analysis. We do 2 toxin tests per sample, so that's 76 toxin tests that were conducted. And from that, we had 17 tests that were above an advisory threshold and led to us issuing an advisory. Next slide, please. So what I really want to share with you today is this emerging topic, and that is benthic algae mats. So this is a subcategory of harmful algae. So what we've been talking about to this point and what we've talked about in Clark County for several years is planktonic algae blooms. So we've been monitoring those in Clark County since 2007. And this is the blooms that we see that they're mixed into the water column. They collect in scums on the surface of the water. They often accumulate at or near the shoreline, so it's really easy for people to find them. And then as those blooms get more dense, the water clarity reduces as it blocks out the light in the water. So again, most commonly found in lakes, ponds, and slow-moving water because it is very temperature dependent. So benthic algae mats are a different type of harmful algae. So we first tested these in Clark County in October 2024. So this is very new to us in public health as well. So benthic algae mats, rather than being dispersed through the water column, they're actually attached to the substrate at the bottom of a body of water. So they attach in mats, they can kind of grow up in blobs and spires. When there's an overgrowth, they can detach and float to the surface. But since they are attached to the bottom of that body of water, they can appear in fast or slow moving water. So in addition to lakes, we see those in rivers and streams. These do not affect water clarity since they're attached. You can see in the picture here, the creek that this is from, the water is clear, and then you can see the growth on those rocks at the bottom that could be benthic algae mats. They also have a different texture. They're very slimy, kind of gelatinous, slippery, so very distinct from the planktonic algae blooms. Most importantly, both of these types of algae can produce harmful levels of toxins, so they're both something to be careful of. Next slide, please. So this first came on our radar in October of 2024. I received a very unfortunate call from a woman reporting that her dog had died after recreating on the Columbia River. So they had accessed an area of Ackerman Island, which is only accessible by boat through the Columbia River. So the dog had a very sudden onset of symptoms, including tremors, salivation, stumbling, vomiting, and then they died shortly after that at an emergency veterinarian's office. So fortunately for us, the vet recognized what might be happening and kept a stomach sample from that dog. So we then coordinated with the Washington Department of Health and King County Environmental Lab to have those stomach samples sent to Seattle and tested for toxins. It took a little bit to get those results back, but they did find high levels of anatoxin A, which is the toxin, one of the toxins we routinely test for, as well as dihydroanatoxin, which is a toxin specifically associated with animal cases. So because of those results, the most likely cause of death for that dog was cyanotoxin poisoning from toxic algae. The dog's owner also experienced some symptoms of numbness and tingling on their mouth and tongue, believed to be from an exposure when they were providing rescue breaths to the dog, but they fully recovered. Next slide, please. Some key details from this event. First, the dog owner was well informed about the harmful or potentially harmful effects of algae blooms. They're a resident of the Kaminista-Washougal area, and at the time that this happened, there was actually still an active advisory on Lacamas Lake. So they opted to go to the Columbia River, feeling that it would be safer for their family. According to the reports, there was no visible algae bloom at the port of Kaminista-Washougal, the Columbia River, or Ackerman Island where they were recreating. At no point did the dogs submerge themselves in the water or swim. The dog actually did not like water, so they mostly stayed up on the shoreline. But they did find plant-like material in the dog's stomach, and the dog was vomiting plant-like material, which we now believe to be a benthic algae mat. So following this report, one of our staff members did a site visit in early November. They were actually escorted out to the island with one of the individuals, and they found brown mat-like material at the water line on Ackerman Island. So we received special permission from the King County Environmental Lab to collect this using a protocol out of California. They collected the mat material, sent it to King County Environmental Lab, and again found very elevated levels of toxins in those mat samples. Next slide, please. So in public health, our question now becomes, how did this happen? Well, first, benthic algae mats are just not familiar to the general public. We were not aware and had not received any reports of this type of algae in Clark County waters until this event happened in 2024. So this is new to all of us. And up to this point, our monitoring and education has been focused on the planktonic algae blooms that we see on the surface of the water. So we're now asking ourselves, what can we do differently? Next slide, please. So following this tragic event, we immediately posted temporary educational signage at all 11 marinas and boat launches that are on the Columbia River. You can see an example of one of those signs there, and immediately got to producing new educational materials and more permanent signage that specifically address this concern with benthic algae. We've also been adding that information to our website and updating our information map to include incidents related to benthic algae. And then we've also just been doing a lot of learning and training on this subject because it's new to us as well. Next slide, please. We have spent a lot of time coordinating with other agencies since the Columbia River is shared space. So we now have monthly meetings between Clark County Public Health, the Washington Department of Health, Oregon DEQ, and Oregon Health Authority, as well as some other contributors such as Department of Ecology, to discuss advisory strategies for the Columbia River. Oregon did have a dog death in the St. Helens area in August of 2024, so we know that this is happening on both sides of the river. We've been working as a group to develop and review new signage and outreach materials, really working to align our messaging, and we've had coordinated communications teams between the state and local agencies to ensure that no matter what side of the river you come from, you're getting the same information about this topic. We've also identified contact lists for future concerns related to the Columbia River, so that if there is another event, we know exactly who in each of those groups needs to be notified. Next slide, please. So some of the educational materials we have produced in that group, this is a half sheet that we've put together with some example photos. Next slide, please. And then on the back, it includes the most pertinent information, symptoms to watch for in people and animals, contacts for poison control, as well as the Oregon and Washington contacts to report an event if something does happen. Next slide, please. We've also put together a longer form of this. This is a trifold brochure really intended for use at our outreach events that goes into a little bit more detail about what benthic algae is, such as how it's different from planktonic blooms, how you identify benthic algae mats, kind of the characteristics of it to look out for, as well as some more sample photos. Next slide. And then on this mat, it also includes that same pertinent information, symptoms to watch for in people and animals, as well as all that contact information. Next slide, please. Some ongoing challenges we have with this topic. First, the Columbia River is very big. We have 40 miles of shoreline in Clark County, not including the islands. So that's just a lot of space to have to cover and monitor as a very small team. Additionally, the toxin tests that we have been using for the water samples for planktonic blooms are not a good representation of the toxicity of algae mats. So I mentioned we got special permission to collect that mat sample and send it to Seattle following a protocol out of California. That was a one-time thing. The King County Environmental Lab has already expressed that they do not have the ability or capacity to do this kind of testing on a regular basis. To further complicate things, there are no defined toxicity thresholds for benthic mat advisories. So with the planktonic blooms, the state has set toxicity levels for certain toxins, at which point we issue an advisory. Those levels do not exist for benthic mats. So there is no guideline for advisories specific to benthic mats. So yeah, that complicates things. So because of those issues, we are moving forward primarily with an educational approach, get people to know about this, watch for it so that we can keep people from running into it. Next slide, please. So this is where we are now. We are continuing our weekly monitoring for the planktonic algae blooms. We will continue that monitoring, testing, and advisories for the planktonic blooms. None of that is changing. We will now be investigating benthic algae mat complaints if there is a suspected human or animal illness, and then we would provide notice to the community of such an incident. We're also doing targeted benthic algae mat education and outreach through social media, our newsletters, our website, and at those community outreach events. We're also continuing those ongoing conversations with the governing agencies, Oregon Health Authority, Department of Health, as well as communicating with our lake partners. There's a lot of lake user groups that are very invested in our lake, so keeping communication open with them and teaching them about this new concern as well. And ultimately, we're just trying to be flexible. Since this is new to us, it's new to all of the parties we've been working with in Washington and Oregon. So we're just being open to evolving and adjusting as we learn more about this topic and how it affects us in Clark County. Next slide, please. So that's all I have to share with you today. Thank you so much, and I welcome any questions.
Council, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this information. This is startling. I'm on the river all the time with my dog, whether we're waterfowl hunting or just enjoying the beaches. And I'm just curious, what are the recommendations for like pets? Like, is it that they don't drink any of the river water? Because that's impossible. So I'm just wondering what the threshold is, and if they're thinking that the dog's ingested a chunk of it, or is it just minuscule amounts? And then also I'm wondering, can we set a standard? Do we have the authority at the county level to do anything besides look to the state?
So as far as what to do about pets, so we know a lot of, you are correct, in this incident there was mat material that was eaten. Drinking water, obviously very difficult to keep a dog from doing that. So of course, if you have pets, bringing your own water to try and discourage that behavior. We do know that the water around benthic algae mats is not a good indicator of the toxicity of the benthic algae mat. So if we pull a water sample, it may not show any toxin, even if that comes from water that is right next to an algae mat, because the toxin is bound in the mat. That doesn't mean it can't distribute, but definitely if you're out on the water, look in the water and see what kind of material you see under the surface, and certainly stay away from anywhere mats exist. As far as setting our own threshold, I can let somebody else speak to the authority of it. Most of Washington State's authority or thresholds are based on really good science behind it, which currently doesn't exist. So I would hesitate to say we could arbitrarily select a number just because the science isn't there.
I think it would be difficult, even if we were to set a number, because as Maggie's saying, you test the water around it, you may not find it. This dog that had died had ingested some of the algae material, and this can be anywhere. So you'd have to be continuously sampling benthic mats. There can be a huge number of them. We don't know because the amount of resources it would take to check every square inch of the of the shoreline would be just prohibitive. So, and again, this is incorporated into the mat itself. So this dog got mat material into its stomach. I think that's what happened to the owners because there was probably some material around the dog's mouth when they tried to do CPR with mouth to mouth with the dog, and that's how the owners got affected. It's also serious business. Cyanotoxins can cause liver failure, among other things. So we're not trying to scare anybody. I think we just want to make sure that people are aware of this. But there's no way to test ourselves out of this ahead of time. I think the main focus of this is education, and people be aware of it and protect their dogs. And if they do see benthic algae mats, to let us know. But they can be anywhere along the shoreline.
Okay, thank you. And is there signage on the Oregon side? And is there anything we can do to prevent this?
The prevention part's a little bit trickier because for the most part, you can't see it. Columbia River, again, very big, very deep. So we don't actually know the full extent of it. So it'd be difficult to target specific areas. And as far as I know, there's not specific treatment for benthic algae mats. We've not something we looked into, just because treating it would not be feasible given where we're finding it.
In terms of long-term prevention, algae like two things. They like nutrients and they like sun and warmth. So we need to be, we may end up seeing more of these as the climate changes over time.
And to answer your question about signage, so we have the signage on the Washington side. They commended us for being very on the ball with it because we got it up very quickly. Oregon has been modeling their signs after our signs so that they can do the same posting on their side of the river. A little bit more complicated when it comes to signage in the middle of the river. So the island where this happened, the sandbar where it occurred, it only exists seasonally. And we found out after the fact that it is private property. So while we were collecting samples, we did not know that, but we found out since it's private property and have been mostly unsuccessful getting in contact with the owners to see about putting any kind of signage on the space where this actually happened. So that's still a work in progress.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I just encourage you to look into anything that we can do about it, treatment-wise. I know it's a new thing, but when we have kids and pets in Cottonwood Beach, there's some stagnant areas along there that could potentially have risks, and this sounds like a very dangerous toxin.
I think the issue with this is that they're not necessarily associated with stagnant. So it's a different situation than what we're seeing in the lakes where we get blooms, planktonic blooms that are associated with not much circulation. These benthic algae mats can exist in parts of the river where there is water flowing.
Other questions?
Chair,
Go ahead.
you mentioned that in this past year, 2 pet deaths have occurred, correct? And the symptoms seem pretty severe on animals, not as severe according to your list here on humans, but have there been any reports of human deaths as a result? Anywhere?
Not to my knowledge. Like, we did have the illness from the pet owner, but dogs are especially susceptible, partly because their exposure is greater. They're like drinking the water and chewing on material. And then they're also more susceptible to different types of toxins. So I mentioned anatoxin A, that's one that we test for routinely. It can affect humans and animals. The dihydroanatoxin is specific to animals. So that one is much more commonly seen with animal deaths. But to my knowledge, we've not had any human deaths.
I'm not aware of any deaths since I've been here with the health department, 19 years, but this is becoming more common, and I believe there have been deaths elsewhere. We can get you that information. It is for example, it causes liver failure in people, so it's been studied, but I don't know the frequency of it. I mean, most people will avoid, when they're at recreational water, they will avoid getting into the water when they see it's just not very appetizing to go in there, and when you have scum, an algae scum, so people tend to avoid it. But It can be lethal in humans. That's why as well as pets, that's why we're bringing this to people's attention.
And in your report on page 8, you mentioned that prior to 2024, Public Health had not received reports of benthic mats in Clark County waters. But I heard you mention just a moment ago that this is a known algae. This is anything that's just recently evolving. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is known algae. Algae's been around for a long time. We're just seeing more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, what we're accustomed to seeing is the blooms, so those ones that grow on the surface in the scums. We didn't start monitoring the benthic algae, so the subsurface attached to the bottom, that we hadn't received reports of until October. So it's technically the same kinds of algae, it's just a subcategory in how it grows, where it grows, like where we see it. But the toxins are the same, a lot of the genus are the same. It's just, yeah, it's a subcategory.
I want to mention just one other challenging part of this in terms of testing. You can test a planktonic bloom and you may not find any toxins there. And it can turn around pretty quickly, especially if you get some dye off of the algae. So just testing it alone I can't assure people that if I test it today, sometime today or tomorrow, there isn't going to be toxin there. I mean, the message is to avoid algae, but you can have a bloom without toxin and then it can appear.
Counselor Young?
Yeah, this is interesting to me because the last thing I would ever think about when there is actively flowing water would be an algae problem like this. So this is very interesting. I just wanted to commend you for the action that you've taken on something that, you know, is new and not what you typically do. So I appreciate the efforts that you've taken up to this point to try to educate people and working with the people across the river. This is, in my opinion, what public health is all about.
Thank you. It's been a very strong coordinated effort between many agencies and many parties. So a lot to keep track of, but we're very proud of what we've done so far.
Has this been present in other areas of the Columbia River system?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure if anybody from my team knows.
The pictures you showed were from Benton Franklin. So.
Yes, some of those pictures are from Benton Franklin. Those are not in the Columbia River, I don't believe. I believe it's one of the smaller creeks or streams. But Benton Franklin is very aware of this issue and doing work. So if it is in the Columbia River up there, they're probably doing the same things we are.
Okay, and is it a different species than the blue-green algae?
Not necessarily. So it can be. So there are a couple other, there's some species and genus that are seen in both. Some of them are only seen in the planktonic blooms. Others are only seen in the benthic mats. So there's some crossover, but not necessarily.
Okay, and there could be algae mats that don't have the toxins?
Correct.
Or is there ways to distinguish between one and the other?
Unfortunately, that's very difficult to do. So, so a lot of these different species of cyanobacteria, some of them have the capacity to produce toxins, some of them do not. So you have to really go into like genotyping, like you have to like really get into detailed like testing to figure out specifically if it is a toxin producer. But even if you have ones that are toxin producers, they're not producing toxins all the time. So even if you do find it, there's no guarantee that it's toxin without doing the testing. So, and that's true for the benthic algae mats and the planktonic blooms. So that's why when we see a bloom, we always have to pull a sample and send it for toxin testing.
This is very tough.
Yes.
So that's why I said, you can have a bloom, let's say in Vancouver Lake, and find no toxin, and then the next day or even hours later, toxin can appear. So, especially if there's a die off of the algae and their cells break open, but you can't. The advice is to avoid the blooms and avoid the mats.
Yeah. And then the other thing, generally, I think we think of the blue-green as being present when it's warm. There's lots of sun. If these mats wash up, which they could wash up at any time, they could be present at any time of the year. Is that correct? And they could be toxic also at any time of the year.
Yes, and I think that's part of how this pet incident happened is if, that mat had broken off from somewhere else in the river and it was kind of moved up on shoreline. We also see this with planktonic blooms where, if something is tidally affected or seasonally affected, as the water levels change, it deposits on the shoreline. So it could be out of the water entirely. And for a certain period of time, that toxin will still be potentially dangerous, even if it's nowhere near the water. So yeah, it's complicated.
And there's really no way to know how pervasive this is. It must be at least enough of it to have broken off and washed up on
Yes,
shore.
with the Columbia River, that's particularly difficult because we can't see the majority of the river. So like these, some of the protocols and examples that I've seen where people do routine benthic algae monitoring, they're doing it in streams that are only 20, 30 feet wide and maybe a couple feet deep. So they are able to scan the entire area to find like a % cover of the benthic algae mats. That's obviously not feasible with the Columbia River. So a lot of the protocols or monitoring strategies that are established, like from California, we can't apply here.
I mean, for most humans, this isn't going to be a huge risk because we're not going to be ingesting benthic algae mats. I mean, that's what happened with the dog. I mean, with the lakes, I mean, you're swimming in it, you're breathing it in, you're more likely to get exposure. But given what happened with this family and this dog, and then the exposure that the family had through performing mouth to mouth on the dog, we really think that people need to be aware of what the risks are. And even we don't want pets to die either. So,
Chair,
Yes, go
I
ahead.
think there may be an issue in the audience. I believe she may need some help.
Carmen, please don't make any obscene gestures.
I saw him do it. I saw him go like this.
Okay, please stop.
Tell him to stop. Because he's supposed to be a professional and he's acting like a.
I have no idea what this lady's talking about, but I
Okay, please stop.
So I saw that.
I think it's, Chair, can we remove her from the,
Let's just not engage and please stop, whatever it was.
Sure.
I'm sure was
I have a
inadvertent.
follow-up question.
Yes, thanks.
I was wondering if there's ways that we can do more targeted outreach to pet owners and families that recreate on the beaches. Just some ideas, pet stores or work with Banfield. Just wondered if you're already doing that and what other ideas you have to get outreach besides the signage at the marinas, which is an excellent idea.
So the vets, that is a very good idea. And I know, obviously, we're talking about benthic algae mats here, but a couple years ago, we actually had a huge outreach project where we had, I believe it was an intern. This was before I was here. They found every veterinarian office, every animal hospital in Clark County and provided signage, informational brochures, all of that information delivered to every single vet office in Clark County. So that was specific to the planktonic blooms. So that we could model that again now with these new materials that we have for benthic algae mats, since that is different. But we know how to do it, and we just haven't yet executed that kind of a plan.
Are there any other questions? Well, I appreciate you being proactive on this. This is a thorny issue. Lakes and rivers are very complex, and just keep us advised. Thank
you.
Okay. So with that, we'll move to comments from the public, and we're getting the sign-up sheet now.
Win Gersich.
Hi, my name is Win Gersich. In 2005, they had a convention in San Francisco, and the UN decided to add chloramine to the drinking water for recycled toilet to tap. And when the ammonia can't be boiled out, it causes algae bloom. Like you put ammonia in your nitrogen and stuff on your lawn to grow it. What do you think it does to the ocean when the wastewater treatment plants dump their stuff in the ocean? So globally, they're having algae blooms everywhere. And there was things in the news that the sea lions are dying and all this other stuff because of this. So if we used alternative technology to disinfect the water instead of putting poison in it, we wouldn't have this problem. And chlorine is an insecticide. And you know my poem, we all breathe the same air and we drink the same water. Don't be sheep being led to the slaughter. We pay enough taxes, we deserve clean water. So don't be had because chloramine's bad. Golly yipes, it'll rot your pipes. That whole poem was about chloramine and what it did. And this needs to be fixed. But what I came here for today is because Melnick was very concerned about babies and doing prenatal care. And one of the first shots that a baby gets is a hepatitis shot. Well, Fauci in 2078 through 82, that he made the gays take the hepatitis B shot and gave maids through the shot. We know now that when a baby gets a hepatitis shot, the minute it's born, the aluminum levels in it are so high that it says that the aluminum levels in the hepatitis shot is 375 mcgs. And they said that this paper, the author found the highest levels of aluminum burden given to a 2-month-old. And it says 270 mcgs per day is almost 50 times higher than the official FDA safety limits. We give adults a dose of aluminum based on weight, and it would have to have, based on weight, if they give the same amount to an adult, it would be 15 to 38 vaccines in one day. So they're killing these babies. And there was another doctor that I saw say that if a baby dies within 10 days, it dies from the aluminum in the shot. Another thing, too, is when they have these nanoparticles right now, Gates is spraying with the chemtrails. He's trying to block the sun. He's got a patent with Harvard. They're spraying aluminum oxide, strontium, barium, lead, mercury, graphene, and what they say in these nanoparticles, and plastic. So we breathe a credit card a week. No one's addressing that. And plus the fact they found that it has these little eggs in it. So when on Brighteon.com, Mike Adams and Dr. Ruby, they hatched these eggs. They put them in an incubator for 5 days, and when they hatched, what was in it was a fungus. So we're breathing a fungus every day,
Thank
too.
you. Your time is up. Let me guess.
Carmen De Leon,
Here. Yeah, my name is Carmen De Leon. You may know me as Mello. And I'm talking about the health thing. Yeah. This algae thing, it is worldwide and it is scary. And the Great Barrier Reef has lost thousands of miles because of it, because of this bleaching and the warming of the water. And if the Great Northwest has a reputation for people who enjoy the water dying and their pets dying, it is a serious issue. And it makes me sad because it is a sign of global warming. I don't know what we could do. The only suggestion I can give, because I don't know, is maybe there's a certain fish that will eat the algae, because we do need to protect our waters. Anyways, that being said, this is health. And we talked about the shots being given, which I never took a COVID shot, but I was warned not to because my uncles called me from Guatemala saying that people who were taking the COVID shot were dying. And here in the United States, I had a friend who worked at the hospital who said, if you want to keep your job as a nurse, you better get these shots. She took the 4 shots. She got brain farts, if I can say brain farts. She could no longer perform regular duties. She couldn't put in a simple, stitching somebody up and something like that because the shots affected her brain. I know somebody else like me who refused to take the shot. She caught COVID too, like me. And she went to the hospital. Thank God I never had to go. I just stayed home in, 3 weeks and almost died. But I came out of it with no medication. She was admitted to the hospital and given shots and then recuperated, but lost her hair. So there's repercussions to these actions. I feel sorry for people who don't have hair, and I mean, I appreciate mine, thank God. But yeah, the shots are danger, and we were warned from Guatemala that people in other countries were getting worse shots. I mean, more people were dying. And the last thing, I guess I have one more minute to say, is that if you want to talk about the public health concern, the mental health is a grave issue. And it makes me almost cry when I see mothers hand their kid a cell phone and entertain yourself and stare at the cell phone before they can form a sentence, before they're potty trained. They're like this. Ooh, and they're throwing fits. It's a mental issue, and it's a way to dumb down the nation's children, to keep people just smart enough to run the machines, but never good enough to own one, to keep you in the service mode, to keep taxing you and do as you're told. We have a society, we're supposed to be first world, but yet we're 35th or 35 in the whole world. So yeah, we should be number one if we're a first world nation, but we're obviously gladly becoming a third world country.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay.
Caller, you've been sent a request to unmute. Please go ahead and do so. State your name for the record and go ahead with your comment.
Good morning, Kimberly Goheen Elbin. So I think this is an emergency issue. I really do. The dog death is alarming. My biggest concern is when families walk near these toxic blooms, possibly barefoot, or the water level may have risen and deposited toxic bloom debris, and people may be getting infected through their feet. Not only pets could be tempted to drink the water, drink that contaminated water, but children may not drink the water, but would be more likely get droplets of contaminated water into their eyes or possibly cuts in their skin. It seems Medicine Man Milnick relates these constant
Okay, please no
blooms
derogatory terms.
on
Thank you.
climate change. I think he knows that humans are actively polluting our atmosphere, trying to block the sun from heating the earth, but actually is using toxic particles spraying all over the United States. However, there are 7 states that have made it illegal to spray chemicals over their state, and a few of the United States, a few of us patriots have demanded that this council stop geoengineering chemtrails spraying over Clark County and all of Washington state. These toxic chemicals fall to our land, our waters, and our trees. That's why forests ignite so quickly and burn hot. I also believe that chemtrails are the reason for hoof rot and to our deer and elk. The fact is the earth is polluted, and I've demanded cease growth over Clark County for the next 10 years to control overpopulation, pollution, and sustain our depleting resources. The earth is in big trouble. It's not the climate, well, it is the climate that's doing it, but so all fresh drinking water is polluted with forever chemicals. We humans are the cause of severe toxic pollution around the world, and the earth was created to take care of itself, bringing about hurricanes and severe weather to clean itself. That's how God made it. However, humans have to have their stocks and bonds in chemicals, and so they're making millions and millions of dollars, and those are the very people that are out to try to kill us because they have polluted the earth with their chemicals, and we humans have used them. So this starts at home. This Board of Health needs to educate the people to what they can do at home to stop chemical use and get down to sustaining what we need to live, our land, our air, and our water.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, conclusion of public comment. And are there any comments from the board? Seeing none. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was late to my mute button.
Oh, no
I
problem.
would just like to follow up and ask, we had our retreat earlier this year, and I'm wanting to know when the follow-up will take place to that.
I thought we had a meeting, we were planning to have a meeting in a couple of months about, you're talking about FAC, the Public Health Advisory Council, and the Board of Health, correct, Counselor Young?
Yes, when is that?
I will check and I don't have my calendar here with me right at the moment, but I'll check on that, make sure we get back to you.
Okay, great.
I think
Thank
it was
you.
supposed to happen within the next couple of months, so.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle just reminded me that our Mallory from our department is working with your office on scheduling that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, without objection, the Board of Health meeting is adjourned.